Hello, welcome to today's training on unlawful harassment and apprenticeship programs. Today's training is a requirement of the U.S. Department of Labor for all registered apprenticeship programs. As we go through today's training, please refer to the quiz that should be in front of you. Now would be a good time to write your name and the date, as you will be filling this out and turning it in per DOL requirements to show that you have participated in this training. Some people think of harassment in the workplace as something that happens to other people at other companies. Other people experience harassment firsthand on a regular basis. And still, others are aware of situations that are making someone else uncomfortable, but are unsure what they can do about it. The truth is, harassment can happen to anyone in any company, regardless of their position or whether they are male or female. But it is more likely to happen to people who have less power in the workplace or are perceived as being outside of the norm of what has traditionally been expected there. Historically, women, minorities, and LGBTQ+ workers have been particularly likely to experience harassment in the workplace, but they are by no means the only victims. Harassment in the workplace can occur in many different contexts and can target people from many different backgrounds. Upon completion of this training, you will be able to do the following: define unlawful harassment, be able to provide examples of various types of conduct that constitute inappropriate and/or unlawful behavior, be aware that harassing behaviors will not be permitted, know how to take appropriate action if you are being harassed or are a witness or bystander to harassment, know how to report harassment, be aware that retaliation will not be tolerated when a complaint is raised. We will now show a short 5-minute video. While the video is playing, please reference your quiz as you will receive the information needed to answer questions 1 through 7.
Welcome to Introduction to Anti-Harassment in Apprenticeship Programs. Some people think of harassment as something that happens to other people at other companies. Other people experience harassment firsthand on a regular basis. And still others are aware of situations that are making someone else uncomfortable, but are unsure what they can do about it. The truth is, harassment can happen to anyone, in any company, regardless of their position or whether they are male or female. But it is more likely to happen to people who have less power in the workplace, or are perceived as being outside the norm of what has traditionally been expected there. Historically, women, minorities, and LGBT workers have been particularly likely to experience harassment in the workplace, but they are by no means the only targets. Harassment occurs when the actions of one or more people creates a situation where an individual worker or group of workers feels uncomfortable, belittled, offended, threatened, or intimidated in the workplace. When workplace harassment is because of someone's religion, sex, race, color, national origin, sexual orientation, disability, age, or genetic information, it may be unlawful. The same is true if someone is harassed because they filed an EEO complaint. Harassment may be unlawful when it is unwelcome and so frequent or severe that it creates a work environment that a reasonable person would consider intimidating, hostile, or abusive, or otherwise results in an adverse employment decision, such as the individual being fired or demoted. Such harassment, intimidation, or retaliation will not be permitted in our apprenticeship program at all. It's important to understand and recognize which situations could be considered unlawful harassment. The harasser can be a coworker, the person supervising an apprentice, the training director, or even a customer or vendor. Both men and women can be harassers or targets. Unlawful harassment may include offensive or crude language or behavior, bullying, intimidation, and discrimination. Some harassment situations involve obvious discriminatory behavior, for example, sexual comments, racial slurs, or physical aggression or verbal abuse directed only at individuals with disabilities. But unlawful harassment is not always easy to recognize. For example, one person may think she is just telling harmless jokes to a friend, while a bystander may find that joke offensive. Actions or language that might not offend one person might bother someone else. In some situations, people accused of harassment actually believe that their actions are welcome or funny. Regardless of whether one person intends to offend another, a behavior may be unlawful harassment if it is unwelcome and has the effect of offending a reasonable person. Any harassment can have a negative impact on individuals and the company, especially if it is unlawful. Harassment can affect an apprentice's ability to work effectively, or even the effectiveness of the whole team. Harassment can negatively impact individuals, our program culture, recruitment and retention of apprentices, our legal standing, and our reputation in the community. If you have experienced harassment, consider making it clear to the harasser that the behavior is unwelcome and against company policy, and maybe against the law, if the harasser thought it was a joke or otherwise wasn't aware of how it was being received. However, if addressing the situation with the harasser directly proves to be ineffective, or if you are concerned about the impact of a direct confrontation on your safety or well-being, you should report it directly to your manager, human resources, or other appropriate organization resource. Doing so can prevent similar incidents from happening to someone else and may resolve the situation you are experiencing. Retaliation against any apprentice or employee who reports harassment or other kinds of discrimination, or participates in an investigation, may also be unlawful and will not be tolerated. The apprenticeship program has an obligation to investigate any harassment claims and take appropriate action to ensure that unlawful harassment does not continue. Some harassment situations may result in legal action or employee termination. If they are harassed because of their race, color, national origin, sex, religion, sexual orientation, age, or genetic information, apprentices also have the right to file complaints with the agency with which the apprenticeship program is registered. Contact information for this agency is posted in our workplace. Every employee has the right to work in an environment that is free of harassment, intimidation, and retaliation. We all have a responsibility to contribute to an environment where all employees, including apprentices, regardless of their diverse races, ethnic and genetic backgrounds, genders, ages, disabilities, and sexual orientations, are valued and respected.
Please take a few minutes to finalize your thoughts and answer questions 1 through 7 before we proceed.
are now going to provide you with 5 different scenarios. As we work through these scenarios, please follow along with the questions on your quiz. Scenario 1, out of line. Now that we've covered the basics of recognizing unlawful harassment in the workplace, let's take a closer look by considering some scenarios. Quid pro quo, or this for that. The harasser is typically a manager or person of authority. Occurs when agreeing to or rejection of the harassing behavior could result in a tangible employment action, such as hiring, firing, or promotions. Even a single incident, if severe enough, can be evidence of unlawful harassment. Sexual harassment includes situations in which an employee is subjected to unwelcome comments, advances, or gestures because of his or her sex. It makes it difficult for the person being harassed to do their job, creates an offensive or intimidating work environment. Out of line. Over the past few weeks, Kendra has been working with her manager, Yosef, to learn how to code technical data. Whenever they are alone, Yosef stands a little too close to Kendra and has started touching her hand and shoulders while they talk. When he asked her to have dinner with him last week, she told him she's not interested. Today, Yosef asked Kendra to come to his office and again asked her out. When she starts to refuse, he quickly interrupts and suggests that if she stops playing hard to get, he could approve her to move to the next level more quickly. What do you think? Could this be considered unlawful harassment? If so, how? What if the manager had been a woman and the person being harassed was a man? What if both parties were the same sex? Please use this time to work through the questions on your quiz.
Scenario 2, same thing, different day. When harassment occurs, witnesses and bystanders may also be impacted. This could cause a negative impact on individuals, teams, and the organization as a whole. Employees who witness harassment or become aware of it could also experience feelings of anxiousness or being intimidated by the situation. When this occurs, it can negatively impact work performance, morale, and apprentice retention. Jorge is quietly working on a complex wiring project. Suddenly, his coworker Max rushes towards him and, as he does frequently, starts screaming loudly at him. Today, it's about an error Jorge made in finishing out the electrical work the other day. Max is furious that he is going to have to redo Jorge's work. He gets closer and closer to Jorge's face, continuing to yell and call him names, including several racial slurs. Without waiting for Jorge's response, Max storms away, exclaiming how he will never again trust a gay Hispanic to do the job right. What do you think? Consider Max's behavior. What are some indicators that he is unlawfully harassing Jorge? Is Jorge at fault here? What impact might this behavior have on other employees or apprentices who witnessed the harassment? Take this time to reflect on these questions and answer them on your quiz.
Scenario 3, harmless talk. Another form of harassment is hostile environment harassment, which involves unwelcome verbal or physical conduct based on a protected characteristic that significantly interferes with an individual's job performance or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Behavior does not have to be directly targeted at any particular individual to be considered harassment. As mentioned earlier, a hostile work environment can affect the apprentice's ability to work effectively or even the effectiveness of the whole team. In some situations, people accused of unlawful harassment actually believe that their actions are welcome or funny. Angie may think that she is just telling harmless stories and jokes with a friend, while a bystander, Chris, may find that conversation offensive. Regardless of whether one person intends to offend another, this type of behavior may be considered unlawful harassment if it is unwelcome, is so frequent or severe that it creates a hostile or offensive work environment and has the effect of offending a reasonable person in the position of the person who it is subjected to. Clear communication that behavior is inappropriate is often one of the most effective ways of stopping it, especially if the harasser thought it was a joke or otherwise wasn't aware of how it was being received. In a calm, rational manner, make it clear that the behavior is unwelcome, is against organization policy, and may be unlawful. For example, you might say, "Please stop harassing me. I'd just like to focus on my work." If you witness a harassment situation, consider stepping in and making the same points. In fact, if you are a supervisor, you may have a duty to do so. Otherwise, you place the apprenticeship program at legal risk. Harmless talk. Karishma, Angie, and Chris are apprentices learning to be CNC operators and programmers. Karishma and Angie are good friends and they regularly go out together on the weekends. At work, they often talk and laugh together about the men they go out with, sometimes loudly sharing intimate details. In her work area, Angie has a picture of the backsides of a line of male dancers. Chris works near Karishma and Angie and can't avoid overhearing their conversations. This week, he hears Angie making sexual comments while showing Karishma some pictures on her phone. What do you think? Is Angie and Karishma's behavior appropriate in the workplace? Chris is a bystander and is not being targeted, but could this be unlawful harassment? Does it matter if Angie and Karishma didn't mean to offend Chris? Take this time to think over these questions and provide the answers on your quiz.
Scenario 4, out in the open. Unlawful harassment can happen anytime, anywhere. Unlawful harassment can happen on social media, through text and email, at a social event, while traveling, or outside of work hours. It does not have to physically occur in the workplace during work hours to have a negative impact. Bullying can lead to harassment. When an individual or group of people is disrespected or bullied on the basis of a protected characteristic, such as but not limited to race, color, sex, disability, age, the behavior can escalate and lead to unlawful harassment. Unlawful harassment may result in lawsuits and may jeopardize the apprenticeship program. Scenario, out in the open. In preparation for gender reassignment, Cameron has recently changed his legal name to Karen and has started to dress in more feminine clothing. Many of Karen's coworkers have been supportive, but some have not. She expected that things might be a bit awkward, but was taken aback last week when she discovered that two fellow apprentices, Sharon and Rob, have been taking pictures of her and posting them on social media along with negative comments and their ideas on how to teach Karen how to be a woman. Now her coworkers are starting to avoid working with her. What do you think? Can unlawful harassment happen online or outside of the workplace? Do you think Sharon and Rob's behavior is a workplace issue? Take this time to review and reflect on the questions and provide the answers on your quiz.
Scenario 5, just let it go. Speak up. Ignoring the problem or letting the behavior continue could result in it escalating to something more serious. If you're being harassed or you are aware of an unlawful harassment situation, you can report it to your managers or you can report it to the appropriate resource within your organization. Retaliation is unlawful and will not be tolerated. A participant in our apprenticeship program may not be intimidated, threatened, coerced, retaliated against, or discriminated against because the individual has any of the following: has filed an EEO complaint, has opposed a practice prohibited by federal or state equal opportunity law, has assisted or participated in any manner in any proceeding under any federal or state equal opportunity law, or otherwise exercised any rights and privileges protected by the apprenticeship EEO regulations. Such retaliation is unlawful and will not be tolerated. Our program will investigate and take appropriate action if we learn of such retaliation. Scenario, just let it go. Samir joined an elevator constructor mechanic apprenticeship program about a month ago. Once or twice a week since he started, he's been finding threatening notes. One showed a drawing of a man in a turban with a big X on his forehead. Another suggested that a limping old man doesn't belong in an apprenticeship program, and he would leave if he knew what was good for him. Samir hasn't seen anyone leave the notes, but he has noticed that a small group of his coworkers seem to be watching him closely. He talks to his coworker, Brendan, about the situation, but otherwise, he's been doing his best to just ignore it. What do you think? What characteristic or characteristics is Samir being harassed because of? Is the discrimination based on these characteristics considered unlawful? Should he just ignore this situation or should he report it? Why? Brendan hasn't actually witnessed the harassment. Is there anything he can do? Is Samir protected from retaliation if he reports the harassment? Is Brendan? Take this time to reflect on these questions and answer accordingly on your quiz.
We will now show a short 10-minute video to help reinforce the concepts that we have discussed so far today. During this video, please pay attention and refer to the true-false questions on your quiz. As you watch the video, you will receive all of the information needed to be able to answer those questions.
The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, has established that employees have the right to a safe and healthy workplace. Employees also have a right to be treated with respect and dignity while they're on the job. But every year, tens of millions of U.S. workers report that they have experienced some type of harassment at work. This offensive behavior is bad for people and for business. It's also illegal. But it doesn't have to happen.
You know, you're looking pretty nice today.
In this program, we will discuss what harassment is, why it is detrimental to us all, how you should respond to it, and ways that you can avoid violence if possible. A day on the job can often pass more pleasantly when workers keep things light by sharing humor, banter, and maybe even a little horseplay. But sometimes an employee's verbal or physical jabs might get too pointed, so a coworker begins to feel more than a little uncomfortable. The joker may not know when to back off, or they may not want to. For reasons of their own, or maybe no real reason at all, they keep needling their target, pushing buttons, testing boundaries. This is called harassment. It is unwelcome and offensive, and can make a workplace feel hostile and abusive for the victim. There are many types of harassment. It includes verbal abuse, things that people say that are hurtful or disturbing to another, as well as physical abuse. Abusive horseplay can hurt a victim's body as badly as it does their feelings. While much of the harassment that takes place at work is done intentionally, it's important to remember that it is not always meant to be harassing. So as you interact with your coworkers, keep in mind that each individual is the judge of what they feel is offensive. Something that doesn't bother one person may be very hurtful to another. The impact of harassment on a workplace is not limited to the victim alone. It can create a tense and hostile atmosphere that can affect everyone, even those who are not exposed to the harassment directly. This toxic work environment can damage employee morale and reduce job satisfaction throughout the organization. It can also drive down productivity, directly affecting a company's business. But that's still not the whole story, because all too often harassment can escalate into workplace violence. People can be hurt, even killed. Everyone involved in a violent incident may also be subject to disciplinary action by their company. They could even lose their jobs. And regardless of who started it, violence can get you into serious trouble with the law. So complaints of workplace harassment should always be taken very seriously. Workplace harassment is considered to be a type of discrimination, and as such, it is against the law. The 1964 Civil Rights Act made it illegal to discriminate against anyone because of their race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Other laws have been passed to protect people against discrimination on the basis of age, disability, gender identity, and sexual orientation. Many instances of harassing behavior focus on personal characteristics like these. For example, someone who was harassing an older coworker by constantly questioning whether they could work with the company's newfangled computers would be discriminating against them based on their age. Someone else might harass a coworker by purposely telling ethnic jokes within earshot, which could be discrimination based on ethnic origin or race. and so on. One type of harassment that's received a lot of attention recently is sexual harassment. Sexual harassment can include any type of sexually oriented conduct that the victim finds unwelcome or offensive. Propositioning or sexually assaulting a coworker are examples of blatant forms of sexual harassment. But sexually harassing behavior can also be more subtle and includes making sexual and sexist remarks, assigning a person demeaning tasks because of their gender, or displaying suggestive objects or pictures in a work area.
Oh, have you been working out?
While we may usually think of men as the harassers and women as the victims, women can be harassers as well. Victims can also be harassed by persons of their own gender. And harassers can be virtually anyone: co-workers, supervisors, even customers, clients, or vendors. Like other forms of harassment, sexual harassment can be devastating for victims and witnesses as well. So it's critically important to be able to recognize all types of harassment in a workplace and take action to end it. When harassment occurs in a workplace, it can turn the environment hostile not only for its victims, but for employees throughout the organization as well. That's why it's so important to take action to end workplace harassment whenever it does occur, because experience shows it won't go away on its own. But some employees may resist taking action because they don't want to get involved, be a tattletale, or get anyone in trouble. They may dismiss harassment as something that comes with the job, or worry that they're being too sensitive about it. Every employee has a responsibility to help their company deal with workplace harassment. We each need to do our part to shut it down and prevent it from escalating into violence or sexual assault. When a coworker says or does something that disturbs you, you should let them know how it makes you feel, because what offends you may not be offensive to them. So they may be unaware that what they're doing could bother someone else. You don't have to be confrontational, but you need to let them know that what they're doing is offensive. Sometimes that's all it takes to resolve the problem. However, if the behavior continues, you should report it to your supervisor or the HR department. When harassment includes threats of violence, the situation can be much more serious, and you should report it immediately. But whenever possible, it's important to take the time to write down the details of a harassing incident first. In addition to substantiating your report, this documentation helps others to fully understand the situation. Note the date and time, what happened during the incident, who was present, and why you feel it was harassing. If you have received offensive memos, emails, or pictures, bring them along with your notes when you make the report. When harassment occurs on the job, it can damage employees' morale, reduce their job satisfaction, and drive down productivity. These effects are serious enough, but harassment can lead to violence as well. As a result, people can be hurt physically and professionally. If a harasser becomes agitated or physically aggressive, there are guidelines you should follow to try to diffuse the situation and prevent people from getting hurt. First, you need to stay calm. Don't argue or get into a shouting match. Maintain a non-threatening posture. Don't make fists or fidget. Keep your arms low. Stay at least 5 feet away from the other person and avoid physical contact. You might suggest involving a neutral party to help resolve the conflict, or try to change the subject. But if all else fails, you should just walk away. If a harasser shoves or tries to hit you, do not push them back or try to hit them. See if you can get away instead.
You can't even be working on this computer, man. Stop it. This is for like...
If they grab or corner you so you can't leave, call out for help. There's usually someone around who can come to your aid. Do not allow yourself to be drawn into a fight. Fighting on the job can have serious personal, professional, and legal consequences. You could be injured, disciplined, or fired by your employer, even arrested and charged with assault. And even if they started the fracas, the other person could take you to court over it. The behavior that we call stalking is a type of harassment that can be difficult to precisely define. In general, a stalker makes repeated, unwanted, and inappropriate contact with another person in a way that alarms, annoys, or intimidates them. Victims of stalking may find themselves being followed and spied on. They may receive unwanted gifts, email messages, or telephone calls. All this would be disturbing enough, but in some cases, stalking can lead to physical assault or murder, so it needs to be reported immediately. If you feel that you are being stalked by someone who works with you, there are a number of things that you can do to deal with the problem. First, trust your instincts. If you ever feel that you are in physical danger from a stalker, call your company's security department or local police immediately. Never confront a stalker or return the gifts that they give you. This can encourage them to continue their behavior, or it could provoke them to violence. Write down details about each stalking-related incident. Make note of the dates and times, what happened, and who might have witnessed it. Bring this material along when you make your report about the stalker to management or your HR department. There are several things an employer can do to address a stalking situation. In some cases, they may try to discourage the stalker or get them to lose interest by relocating the victim's workstation or revising their schedule. The company could also install a silent alarm or surveillance camera, or even post a security guard in a victim's work area. In the most serious cases, it may be necessary for a victim to obtain a protective court order to get a stalker to leave them alone. As we've seen, workplace harassment can create real problems for employees and the companies they work for. But there are things we can do to avoid being subjected to offensive behavior. Let's review. Harassment is any type of unwanted behavior that creates a hostile or abusive work environment for the victim. If someone says or does something that offends you, you should let them know. If harassing behavior continues, you need to report it to your company. Never confront a stalker or return the gifts that they give you. Anytime you feel you are in physical danger, you should contact company security or your local police immediately. If harassment looks like it may be turning violent, remain calm. Don't allow yourself to be drawn into a fight. Now that you understand what can be involved with workplace harassment and know what you can do to avoid it, you can help make your company a safer and more respectful place to work every day.